Hey everyone, this is Alan Dick. And on behalf of my fellow CommerceNext co-founders Scott Silverman and Veronica Sonsef, I want to thank you for coming to today's webinar. Today is Wednesday, February 17th, 2021, and the topic this week is using gift commerce lessons from 2020 to win in 2021. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome and thank today's speakers for joining us. First off, we have Alvaro de la Rocha. He's a VP of Marketing at Bespoke Post. Melissa Spencer is a CMO at Trade. Sucharita Kodali is a Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. And rounding out our panel today is John Gresh, the Head of Retail Partnerships at Loop Commerce. Thank you guys for joining us today. I also want to thank GiftNow and Loop Commerce for not only sponsoring the webinar, but also doing some gifts for us. 5 lucky live attendees will receive a gift. Sorry, replay listeners, it's only for the folks that joined us live. And that's our way of thanking you. And audience, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today. Let's take a look at the agenda. I'm going to go over some upcoming events with you, go through some housekeeping notes. Sucharita Kodali will then come in and do a little talk on the last wrap up from last year and the holiday, as well as busting some myths that have been propagating. I want to take care of that. John Gresh will come in with a quick talk from GiftNow and Loop Commerce about gifting trends. We'll do some audience questions to take your pulse, and then at the bottom of the hour, we'll be back with a panel discussion and audience Q&A. So, up next, for next week, our topic is going to be what makes creating meaningful experiences for your shoppers so hard. Scott Silverman and his panel, Chris Hardesty, Kristen Smith, Gatan Gachet, and Alex Richardson will ask that question, answer it. That's going to be Wednesday, February 24th at 2 p.m. And you can learn more by going to bit.ly/CNWeb28. You can also check out our YouTube channel. We have 100 plus videos there, including about 15 to 20-ish from the recently wrapped up Marketing Summit series. Some excellent talks on a wide range of topics there. Seriously recommend that you head over there. That's over at youtube.com/CommerceNext. Some housekeeping notes. Don't worry about missing anything. We're going to record this. We'll make it available to you by tomorrow afternoon. We'll shoot you an email with that. And I want to take a moment to show you where things are on the screen. Things have changed a little bit since we used this system last year. Let's direct your attention up to the upper right-hand corner. There's 4 buttons up there. There's a chat tab, Q&A, polls, and handouts. The chat tab is when you want to comment on the webinar, congratulate the speakers, or make comments direct at the audience. All we ask is that you don't be rude or self-promotional. Q&A is when you want to ask the speakers a question. When you want to ask them a question, type it in. And the neat thing about this is that this functionality allows everyone else that's watching to upvote. So if you see a question in there that you think is particularly relevant, upvote it, and that'll let us know which questions are the most important for you. You can enter your chat or Q&A comments or questions at the bottom of the page in the text field. And there's 2 other tabs I want you to look at. Polls, we'll be coming to those close to the bottom of the hour. You can see the results of the polls when they're closed on that tab. And finally, handouts. We've got a pair of handouts from Loop Commerce, as well as all of the slides that we're going to be presenting today. So feel free to download those. If you're watching this on the replay, you can see the document icon on the replay viewer. Just click on that, and all the handouts will be available for you there. All right. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring up Sucharita Kodali. She's the VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. With her holiday recap, doing a little myth busting. Hey, Sucharita, how are you?
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Alan.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, you did our first webinar back in, early last year. And it's
early
great to have you
pandemic.
back for the first one. Yeah, back for the first one here of 2021. So Sucharita, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I am going to be talking at record speed. So strap yourselves in and put your listening ears on. So 2 things on the agenda Here, as Alan had referred to, I'm going to give you a quick recap of Q4, what happened during the holidays. We have some consumer survey data that I thought would be useful. And also, I am going to talk to you about 3 half-truths and 3 lies that have been propagating. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of guidance as to what to focus on or not next year. So one word to really describe 2020, I think, is whiplash, and 2 sets of data points that I thought just really spoke to the crazy starts and stops and fits of all the crazy numbers that have been out there. The unemployment figure on the left-hand side, which seems to be improving, but is still at record levels comparable to the 2008-2009 crisis, and savings rates, which were really strong in the earlier part of the pandemic, that are seemingly easing, but continue to still be high. And one of the implications of all of that has been the impact on retail and of course the restaurant industry. I would have thought that those numbers on the previous slide, literally you'd flip them on the x-axis and that would be what retail had turned out to be. But in fact, when we look at the aggregate numbers, retail in 2020, this is a story that we don't hear a lot about, is actually been at record levels. You may have seen the census released its January numbers, which were higher than 2019 and higher than any of the months in the Q4 season. So we seem to be heading toward a recovery. But the piece that I think is often lost in that analysis is that recovery has been very uneven. And this really lays out that the 2 winners in the entire pandemic have been and will continue to be, of course, pure play e-commerce companies and essential retail. And the big stories of the challenges with the retail industry are really with mall merchants, apparel retailers, and of course, the restaurant industry. Now, when we look at what happened during Q4, what happened was actually a story that in some ways was very similar to years past. When we look on the left-hand side, what did people spend their money on? And this was an online survey, but it was agnostic to which channels, unless we specify in the question, talking specifically about e-commerce, where were people spending in general? As you can see, a lot of these are the categories that typically do well in Q4: apparel, home goods, electronics, toys, gift cards. But the big difference was really on the right-hand side, where the net spend was, for the most part, in 2020 lower than the consumers that were spending more during the holiday season, in large part because they weren't spending as much time with family. There were fewer people to buy gifts for. And also people were not buying earlier than normal. And arguably, they were in some cases buying later than they usually do. All the pushes to purchase in the month of October or earlier didn't really seem to pay off. So just to give you a little bit of background and how this compares to years past, in the past, when we asked people, when did you do your holiday shopping? It was almost a 50-50 split between November and December. As you can see this year, it was a little bit more heavily weighted to December. Even in October, those key times that you saw everything from the Prime Day sale to all kinds of retailers sending out emails pushing for an earlier start to the shopping season, that was the fewest percent. That was the smallest percent of people that said that they started their shopping season. 11/11 has never really had an impact in the United States, continues to have a relatively minor impact. And even Cyber Week, interestingly, was really the time that you saw the biggest pickup, and that continued this year, even after that, into later into December. One theme that was really prevalent this past year was the number of supposed late orders that were going to come because everybody was purchasing in e-commerce and the shipping carriers were just so overwhelmed and didn't have the capacity to deal. Well, this data seems to suggest that those numbers weren't as bad, and they, in fact, not only were they not as bad as we thought that they would be, but they were actually better than the numbers that we saw earlier in the pandemic. And that is really what the data here is it's a handful of different data points of who had late orders, who had shipping times that were longer than expected. The number that I want you to keep in mind is that 20% number, which are the percent of people that in Q4 this past year experienced late delivery. So let's keep that in mind because we're going to come back to it. And the most important part is, well, what happened when the orders were late? So not only was it the majority of orders that didn't appear to be late for most shoppers, of those who did get late orders, there really either was no impact or it didn't really do anything to change their online holiday shopping behavior. And that's really why I wanted to showcase the data in the red here, which were the percent of people of that 20% that were either upset or were so disappointed that they decided to change their shopping behavior. And as you can see, it's a low double-digit percent of a low double-digit percent, which certainly, kind of is not any number to ignore. I mean, anytime you have customer service issues, you want to take care of it. But the good thing is that this was not so overwhelming that it crushed any particular retailer, or really even crushed expectations around e-commerce. One other question we often get is what is going on with mobile shopping? And to be honest, we get this question less and less. It really, mobile is such an embedded part of the overall experience that it's not even something that's called out that much anymore. But what is interesting is that really since 2016, we've seen a bit of a leveling off in the percent of transactions that are happening on, and the percent of retail, the percent of sales that are happening on mobile devices, at least in the US. It's just interesting because we often will talk about growth that continues forever and ever. And this is a great example of having experienced early hypergrowth between 2013 and 2016, and then seeing that, almost completely level off every year since. So now I want to get into some of the myths that we keep hearing about over and over and over again. And I at least will share with you some of the data that we have, and then you can decide if you agree with me or not. And if you don't, I'd love to hear that as well, because it's always great to hear different perspectives and different data points that could support alternative points of view. Number one, curbside forever. And the reason that we hear this is just because of the amount of curbside that has been rolled out and the belief that consumers are going to insist on having curbside many, many months into the future. In fact, when we've asked consumers, a double-digit percent, in this case, somewhere between 21 and 24% of people say that even after the pandemic is done, they expect to be using curbside pickup. Now, here is the challenge, is that I'm not convinced that there will be a plethora of retailers, except maybe some of those in quick service restaurants, that will continue to offer it in a major way. And the reason is that it is still relatively expensive. It ends up being on average about $7, even for retailers like grocers. And and while it works in some regions like developing markets in, say, Latin America or in Asia, in North America, it's still pretty expensive. We do see that even though consumers may want to use it, it really doesn't beat stores driving shoppers in and engaging with some kind of a cash and carry transaction, even though the place where we may see it is likely with CSR. So I rate that as a half truth. Two, we hear all the time about video shopping all the time. And to that, what I want to say is that China is not the United States. And even though we may see video shopping doing extremely well in some regions of the world, this does not mean that it is prevalent everywhere. China is a different country in so many different ways. It is different from its political architecture. It's different from, kind of how much the average income is of its citizens, their preferences, their choices, their internet capability. It is also extremely different in two other ways. One is that the United States has had live shopping for almost 4 decades now. In fact, I would argue that the US has been a leader in this form of shopping. We developed the best practices on it. So it is unclear that there is anything more that we are going to learn about this tactic from other parts of the world, because in fact, many of our best tactics have actually been exported to regions like Asia. The other thing is that we have Bridgerton, and I say that not lightly. I say that because In the United States, in developed markets, we have streaming, we have solutions like Netflix, which provide alternative means of entertainment. In regions like China, they don't have Netflix, which means there are fewer alternatives in how they spend their time. So more of that time is spent shopping. I would argue that if they did have streaming, we would actually see a decline in areas like shopping. And a framework that I thought would be interesting for you to think about, and definitely poke holes in this if you think that it is something that needs more refining. But I look at video shopping as more than just simply kind of selling things on Instagram or on some kind of a live video feed. I look at it as you can have synchronous or asynchronous shopping. It can be live or recorded, and it can also be broadcast to lots of people at once, or you can be broadcasting in an individual format. Many of those individual formats are actually available and prevalent on e-commerce sites now through pre-recorded video. We're increasingly seeing even customer service capabilities driving video. The notion of, kind of how video evolves and whether it's purely for commerce or it ends up being a relationship that's far more complex, I think is one that will change and evolve. And certainly for a lot of the Western retailers will become more mature over time. So I rate this as a half truth. Video is going to evolve. It's not going to have the adoption from a commerce standpoint that regions like China have. And if and when we do see live shopping on the internet taking off in the United States in a way that's different than QVC, it's really going to be mastered probably more by small businesses and less by enterprises that tend to be more conservative in their approaches. The next one is I want everything and I want it right now. And this I put as a little bit of a fiction for a couple of reasons. One is that a relatively small percent of consumers said, only 17%, that they were more likely to shop during the Q4 holiday season if a retailer offered same day. So it's certainly not an overwhelming percent of consumers. And the second bullet point is that 20 to 30% of consumers at any moment in time said that they received their e-commerce orders late anyway. So the idea of on-time delivery was certainly something that has changed, evolved, and hasn't really become stronger, I would argue, through the course of the pandemic. On the other hand, we have seen a record amount of financing from venture capitalists go to what I will call Cosmo 2.0. There are companies like Lula and Duffel and Fridge No More. These are all sort of like GoPuff competitors that have basically set up shop in various university towns. They promise delivery essentially for a C-store and like small grocery purchases in as short as you can see here, 15 minutes. There is a startup in Berlin called Gorillas, which promises to deliver you things in 10 minutes. So I too rated this as a half truth, in part because delivery, I would argue, has been slower than it's been in a long time. And, but at the same time, you see, on the other hand, this move toward Cosmo 2.0. One other thing with regard to speedy delivery, you have to be really careful about what you promise. There's actually an FTC rule called postal delivery rules, which I won't get into the details around here, but as more people become aware of that, it's really important to deliver things according to your promise or not make a promise at all, because it's just going to back you into a corner. Sorry, I switched around these numbers here, but this is my next myth, which is that work from home is the future. Offices are dead. And I think this is a pretty substantial lie. If you follow the information, it's a great resource, great newsletter. They actually have a tracker for what companies that have at least tech companies in Silicon Valley, what they have announced they're going to do from a work standpoint. What I thought was interesting is even though the big question is, oh my gosh, we're never going to go back to an office, only one company here on this list of so many companies, many of which are household names, say that they will go fully remote. Only one company on this entire list. And I always equate that to, kind of sort of my children would love to have, chocolate and candy for dinner every night, but their mom and dad won't let them. And it's sort of the same with offices, and kind of what's going to happen is that, of course, employees would all love to have the flexibility of working from home forever, but the truth is that bosses are just probably not going to allow it. Now, one big change I do think may happen is that maternity and paternity leaves will likely be much, much more flexible, especially for white collar workers who now recognize that there is a model for being able to have your cake and eat it too, in allowing people to work from home even after FMLA expires, so that at least for that sub cohort of employees, there will likely be substantially more flexibility in the future. My next myth: stores are dead. Now, yes, there have been lots of stores that have shaken out. We see anywhere from 12 to 15,000 of physical stores that are non-restaurants having closed. But at the same time, you have still about 1 million that continue to remain open. The restaurant industry, obviously much, much more hardly hit, more challenged. 100,000 of those companies supposedly have doors, I should say, have closed. There are 650,000 of them altogether. Estimates from the National Restaurant Association, we will probably have some more audited numbers in the months to come. But I will say that this is a lie, because even though there have been terrible shakeouts in these numbers, this has often been largely overdue. We've been talking about this country being overstored for years before the pandemic. But what I think that the consequences really are is that this concept of dwell time is going to be less relevant than ever. We're actually seeing for a lot of stores, even though they have less traffic, they're actually seeing a lot of their transaction numbers increase. And we also recognize what that means is that stores will rethink their configurations and how they lay out what they do. Now, from a retail standpoint, I really think that a lot of what we're seeing is just about culling the herd and having a long overdue shakeout. 2020 actually had the highest number of bankruptcies in many, many years. And interestingly, it had fewer fashion bankruptcies than ever before, which really means that a lot of the retailers and other sectors that were overstored are finally going either refinancing or in some cases going away. My last myth here is that e-commerce has leapfrogged 50 years. And I wouldn't say it's leapfrogged anywhere near that much, but I would argue that it's leapfrogged maybe 3 years. And that's really the data here. So every year historically, before in the early, kind of before 2020, what we saw is e-com penetration, and those are the numbers in red, growing about 1% every year. So it should have been probably about 18% in 2020. It ended up being 21%. And it'll grow about 1% or 1.5% every year out. So it'll be a little bit more, but certainly to see that 10-year jump, we'd have to go out to probably 2024. So while I'll say there was a big leapfrog, maybe of several years in the Q2 quarter, much of that has stabilized, and it's a few-year jump, not quite a 50-year jump. So with that, I will sign off. This is my contact information, first initial, last name at Forrester. If anyone wants these slides or wants to talk about anything additional, you can also follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I also have a Clubhouse show, if anyone's on Clubhouse these days, Thursdays at 8 p.m., where we talk all about news in the tech industry. So with that, back to Alan.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing that. Hey, a quick question for you from our audience. Cheryl Dubitsky asked, is there an age breakout for the slide on mobile spending?
I don't have that, because the more recent years actually came from Adobe, and I'm sure they have it, and I can probably track it down, but I didn't. I don't have it here, but probably where you're going with that is it a higher penetration amongst younger consumers? And the answer is yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sucharita. We'll see you back when the panel comes on. And now I'd like to bring on John Gresh. He's from Loop Commerce. John, you're standing for this one.
I always stand for these, Alan.
Good man. Good man.
You need to stay active.
You need to stay active. Good for you. All righty.
Great.
Off to you, John.
Thank you. Well, Sucharita, thanks so much for providing those insights. They're always incredibly useful across a wide variety of different people within a retail business. Loop focuses exclusively in what we call the gift commerce market as it relates to gifting in the retail environment. We as a business, of course, cover a bunch of different use cases, but for this particular conversation, we're going to talk specifically the gift commerce lessons that we saw from 2020 and how you might be able to apply those to win things in the 2021 year. So just some stats that we saw, again, with a myopic focus around gifting itself. The pandemic itself created some new sort of mindsets that actually accelerated gifting and it over-indexed in terms of growth versus what we saw in digital, despite the fact that we all saw a hyper growth mode on online sales in general. So 2020, of course, grew fast in digital. Gifting actually grew faster. We saw in the winter holidays a growth of about 8.3%. Online was 29% growth of that. And then we saw within the gifting cohort specifically a lift of about 55%. And so how did that look across the year? Just to give you a sense of the chronology of how that sort of unfolded, we obviously saw similar sales as we would have in, or we did the prior year around Valentine's Day with some type of sort of similarity in terms of the curve that from usage within the platform itself. And since we offer a platform that enables gifting, it's always going to have an exclusive cohort specifically. We saw the lockdowns sort of roll out in the March timeframe, and the first holiday that it really affected was Mother's Day. And you can see the blue is 2020, the yellow is 2019. There's some theories around what happened around Mother's Day specifically. I think it was the first time people really realized they probably weren't going to actually travel. They were likely not going to see mom or somebody else that they wanted to celebrate for that holiday. And our platform and our retailers with the digital gifting capability saw a massive improvement way beyond what you would have seen in a non-digital channel environment. And then that sort of that happened throughout the rest of the year up until, of course, Christmas, where we saw it again spike. And this time we think people were a little bit better prepared for it than they were for Mother's Day. They were sort of living in that new normal. And so they were realizing that the families weren't going to get together the same way, so on and so forth. And so Mother's Day was a really good bump in terms of total revenue that was processed, again, through our platform, almost 300% growth year over year around Mother's Day. Fairly steady AOV. Orders went up significantly. We saw a slight dip in AOV when it came to Prime Day, which we looked at as the launch of the holiday season, as many of you did this year. And then lastly, year over year, in general, we saw those numbers go up again. And so it was a great year for the category itself. We learned some stuff that I wanted to present and give you guys to take away to think about how this might come into effect as you start to plan for these holidays under, again, these conditions that we're in. So not unusual or not different than in the past. Women tend to be a higher volume gifting customer than men. The order volume itself will always over-index female as the buyer. However, males will generally spend more on a per item gift or on a per item basis. And so your women are going to buy a lot more. Your men are going to spend more on a per item basis. The AOVs were north of $100, but we broke it down at that point and looked at how gift cards showed up and then what that meant for products as well. Products we saw in a range somewhere between $90 and $99. Gift cards, consumers again expressed interest in fixed denominations, and the most popular ones we saw it were around that 20, 50, 100, 150, 200. We didn't see it as high, obviously, in the $500 price range, for example. Those gifts tend to have a different nature of relationship between the individuals that are exchanging. And so while the AOV was for gifting holistically was over $100, that most popular price range was somewhere between $50 and $59. That's important when you start to think about what you're going to do around Mother's Day, Father's Day, other major events that are more gifting moments throughout the year that you're planning for, and how you're going to merchandise those different zones specific to that gifting audience. Some more interesting data. And this is what we see in our platform. So our platform allows you to send a gift, and somebody on the receiving side, because it's delivered through a digital experience, they have the choice of accepting that gift. They can exchange it or modify it, or they can completely return it, if you will, or say, I'm not interested in this jacket because I need more pants. And so they can exchange that gift before it ever ships. And so, interestingly, the majority accept the gift as is. So people are generally good gifters, but there's still a huge cohort that did something with it. 23% altered, meaning somebody bought me a blue shirt and I said, great, I need a shirt, but I'll have a red one instead, right? And 14% said, you got it wrong. I'll take something else altogether. Why this is important, or what the insight is here, is that if this is happening in the cohort that gets and receives gifts digitally, then it's probably happening in the same physical world or with the same numbers. And so from a return rate perspective, this may or may not index high against how you typically see returns, but it's something to keep in mind, especially as you start to bring in things like price points, and then of course categories that are better to gift than others from a returns perspective. Men are more picky than women when it comes to the gift themselves. And that wasn't necessarily going to be, I'm sorry, I actually said that wrong. Men are more picky than women when it comes to what they do once they receive the gift. And so there is a bias there. Again, that should be thought about from a merchandising and messaging perspective. It should also be considered in terms of how you communicate to your potential gift shoppers offsite or upper funnel, in terms of the programs or capabilities that you offer to make it simple to get it wrong, because people are looking for that ripcord. And so women tend to accept their gift more often as is, meaning I bought this shirt in a medium and she liked it and just accepted the color and size that I provided to her, where men have a higher propensity to want to exchange that. Excuse me. So we're again in the digital gifting business, right? So we don't get in the business of taking products and put them into a box and using that delivery model physically. We have a capability that enables that to happen online and through other digital channels. And so it's interesting to see that even though that utility you would think is designed for, of course, flexibility, but makes a great way to deliver a gift to somebody across the country, for example, people were actually using it locally, going back to the idea that there's a high likelihood that people, even though they may have been closer to each other from a proximity perspective, they weren't necessarily getting together in person like they may have done in prior years. And so 63% of the gifts were sent to recipients that were in the same state, where in your mind you might think those people would likely get together and they wouldn't need a digital experience to support it. And it turns out that they were doing it anyway. And 54% of the gifts were sent to recipients that were further than 20 miles away. And so breakdown in terms of where it goes from mobile. We saw last year was when we crested over the 50% transactions happening in mobile environments, whether that be tablet or phones. This year it was roughly 55%, and then the breakdown in terms of the payment type that was being used. So one of the things that you're going to have access to or be able to get is an index that we launched this year together with Etailing Group that gives a view of what capabilities consumers are looking for in order to move from indecision to decision as a gift shopper versus somebody who's shopping for themselves. And so we're going to provide this to you. Here are some of the things that we contemplate in that research project. Lauren led that and did a great job compiling the results. Anyone that's seen those types of reports from her before know that it's high quality, actionable data. We'll provide that to you as part of the package that you can download with the content that Loop is providing as part of it. So a few things to kind of consider when you're thinking about how to serve that shopper who's there to buy for somebody other than themselves. First, have you taken a methodical approach to exploring what gift features mean to your customer based on your product assortment? based on the likelihood of which type of segment buying it, right? Don't forget that a brand who offers products that have 95% women as customers, think handbag, accessory type companies, the people shopping those same exact sites or those same brands for gifts are probably actually not that woman. It's probably somebody who's buying for her. So have you really zoomed out and said, who is the customer shopping for gifts? How are they different? And have I actually walked through the path to purchase considering that use case specifically? And that's something that we find often as we're engaging in a new conversation or partnership, that there's a lot of optimization effort done, but it's not really designed or not thought of through the eyes of the person who's actually buying the gift versus the person who's receiving the gift, which is usually the type of customer that they would have at their store in the first place. Have you surveyed your shoppers and asked them what makes it easy, what makes it hard to buy, right? In an environment where your assortment is mostly one size fits all, there's not a lot of optionality, things like that. There's a different set of problems that exist than environments where the assortment is actually really personal. The selections are made by individuals, and that increases the hesitation to purchase in the first place when you think about it as a gift. And then have you thought about your products and the assortment and the ways that you can leverage those to inspire loyalty within the strategy that you're executing to get your customers to come back and buy more often? And so if you're not offering a gifting capability, or you're not thinking about it strategically to the business and serving that particular customer use case, here's a couple of things to think about. Retailers are at different points of figuring out what they're going to deploy in order to win commerce in general. And when you start to break down the different reasons why people shop in general, you start to realize that there might be some strategic channels for you to go and pursue that are not going to be the things that you would find yourself failing against winning business from Amazon for, right? And so we think that there's a big chance to do that in gifting. It's a very, very large economy, and there's a lot of ways for you to deliver the value into the channel. And so here's a couple of examples for you guys to take away when you bring these notes back and think about the ways that you could potentially win there. It's not just about transactions, right? Being able to deliver, a gift that is through a digital format in an environment where shipping cutoffs are going to determine at what day your sales drop precipitously, gives you that extra one-way in order to continue to sell, because you don't need to physically get the product into the driveway, right? It offers competitive differentiation in general. When you're looking at how do you get customers to think of you for particular problem sets or use cases, which is really where we're seeing commerce sort of evolve to, especially in this notion of headless, where it's bring commerce to environments where people are being inspired versus being just a destination of places that people go to in order to make that purchase. Have you thought about the catalog itself? Have you thought about what you might lean into or lean out of during different parts of the year? And have you thought about the fact that there are different audiences that buy for people who buy from your site typically? And so it opens up a new range of audiences that you can go after who may or may not be people that you're thinking about working on going after today. And so that's something that we strongly encourage everybody to look at. Who's the customer that's buying the gift? That's your marketing target in the 2-3 weeks leading up to Mother's Day, for example, because it may not necessarily be the same audience that you're typically chasing. And then from the returns perspective, being able to digitize that experience. So if we think about what Venmo did for cash, making it really easy to move it around, having a digital gifting capability provides that same utility in gifting. And because all of these exchange activities and return activities happen before anything ever leaves the warehouse, the cost of bringing that product back, the lost margin, and quite frankly, the carbon footprint of the delivery in the first place when it was wrong, all gets eliminated when you have what we call gift-rich capability. And so that's the end of my content. Alan, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, John. All right, so let's bring up my screen there. All right. So I want to bring your attention to the upper right-hand corner again. You can see the chat, Q&A, poll, and handout sections. If you have any questions, now is definitely the time to ask those questions. If you're watching this on the replay, make certain to click the document icon at the bottom of the screen. That'll show you where all of the handouts are. And we're going to move right along. Instant poll time. Let's take your temperature out there. Question number 1. How would you rate your e-commerce site for gift giving? Is it feature rich? It's really a strategic focus for you. It's okay, but it could be better. Or number 3, we don't offer anything specific to gifting. And the results are coming in. Definitely middle of the road action here. It's almost 60% of you are saying it's okay, but could be better. A number of you are now saying that you can't offer anything specific to gifting. So I think the final numbers are going to be about 20% of you think it's a strategic focus, 50% say it's okay, but could be better, and about 30% of you say we don't offer anything specific to gifting. Great, let's close that one out. Let's move on to the second question. What types of gifting do you offer on your e-commerce site? And this is a multiple choice. Gift registry, gifting page, gift recommendations, gift card, concierge service, or other. Some of these numbers are coming in right now. Looks like about, first impression here, about a third of you are offering gift cards. In second place, we're definitely seeing gifting page and gift recommendations. Only about 5% of you have a gift registry. 9% of you have a concierge service, and 2 of you, it's other. So definitely a gift card for a solid third of you. Very good. I think we're going to close that poll out. We're running a little long here today, and I want to get to the panel. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the last 2 questions. I'm going to ask our AV guys to bring up the panel. All right. Hey, guys. Thanks for being here. We have 2 new guests with us. I'll have them introduce themselves. Melissa, why don't you start? And then Alvaro, I'll go over to you. Melissa?
Great. Hi, my name is Melissa Barnes. I'm the CMO of Trade. Trade is a D2C platform primarily focused on subscription that enables home brewers to discover craft roasted coffee from all around the country, curated specifically for them and their tastes. And I oversee brand and marketing strategy for the business.
Thank you so much. Alvaro.
My name is Alvaro de la Rocha, and I am a founding team member and head up marketing at Bespoke Posts. We're a subscription and e-commerce site focused really around product and brand discovery. So we have an awesome buying team that kind of scours the world for under the radar brands and products and experiences and delivers them up to mostly a subscriber base, but we also have a la carte shopping.
All right. So Sucharita and John laid out an extensive array of data, and I just want to get your guys' takes on it. What kind of struck you there? What caught your eye? Melissa, I'll go back to you.
Yeah. Well, I would say the seasonal spending was really, really interesting. It stood out to me. So I remember I was actually on a panel at the beginning of December, and there were a number of retail brands on it, and everybody was talking about how much the season was going to be pushed up, and they had their shipping deadlines, and it was basically like the writing was on the wall that holiday was going to be dead basically in December. So I was happy to see your data, and that definitely was consistent with what we saw as well. And we were really betting on all of our forecasting was around what you saw in the data there, that the reality is behavior doesn't change that much. People are going to be shopping last minute. The season doesn't really kick in until December, I think, mentally, and there are procrastinators. And so we saw, like in past seasons, that Christmas Eve and Christmas Day was our biggest spike by far. And that's primarily because we offer a digital gift subscription. So I think it really was specific to that need. And that also kind of spoke to also the demand for timeliness also with shipping and seasonality, that, like you pointed out, people didn't really have a need for things to be delivered super quickly, except when they actually needed it in that moment, where if they either had a gift or they didn't have a gift. So definitely in line with your learnings there.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a comment from one of our viewers saying you can't ask your kids in October what the Santa needs to hear. So, yeah, there are some behaviors that are definitely going to stick. Oh, I'm going to put it on you now.
I think the shipping, kind of going off that last point, the shipping expectations. I think if you listen and just read the headlines, it feels like we're in a world or on a path where everyone has to have like same day delivery. And when we survey our customers monthly, and one of the questions we ask them is across 3 key purchase criteria, like easy to navigate site, good products, shipping, what they value the most. And speed of shipping is 5th from last of the 13, consistently every single time. So that is like barely ahead of a good return and exchange policy and like way behind an easy to navigate site. So I think sometimes the focus is on Amazon of the world and stuff, but yet at least our consumers are not rating that highly. Really, it's the quality of the product and the value someone's getting for that product still like wins in the end. So I do think there might be a tendency for some brands to overly focus on shipping and increasing that versus their core, which is like what are they offering and making sure that is kind of
Well, we're talking about the offerings. Let's kind of dive into a bit of what you're doing on the gifting front. Do you want to kind of tell us more specifically what you're doing in gifting retail and how that played out for you over the holiday?
Yeah, so I mean, we are primarily a subscription business. So usually 90+% of our business comes from our subscribers getting our subscriber boxes, but definitely, through the pandemic and really ratcheting up even more so during holidays, our e-commerce store kind of really grew. So we have a full e-commerce store across all categories with a wide assortment. And so that is during the gifting season, the main revenue driver is both subscribers and non-subscribers shopping in our e-commerce store.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, same question. Can you kind of take us into your gifting program?
Yeah, so we are primarily a subscription business as well, and our primary gift offering is a personalized coffee gift subscription. So people can purchase increments starting at 2 bags all the way up to 24 bags. And the cool thing is the recipient gets to personalize their coffee in terms of the taste. So all the coffees are matched to them, and then also get to select their delivery timing if they want it every 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc. And this year, interestingly, we kind of experimented with a few other options. We wanted to give people more variety, really with that idea that we wanted the experience to be as personalized as possible, not just one size fits all. We also wanted to steer away from gifts with any kind of a shipping requirement. And what we actually found is that the gift subscription still won out far and beyond everything else. And that was our primary focus. And I think that just kind of comes down to people know what they're going to get. It's easy, but also that we really do put a lot of emphasis in creating a gift subscription that is really personalized and high quality. So it doesn't feel like you're giving a throwaway gift. And we have super high redemptions on our gifts too, which kind of shows that we're in the right territory.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Trita, let me bring you in on this. You had some thoughts on our prep call yesterday about gifting retail in particular. I just wanted to give the audience a chance to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, what I will say is that the pandemic has really accelerated the amount of gifting that I think any e-commerce site sees, in large part because people just aren't around their families, and that has meant a lot of year-round gifting. It's definitely meant even bigger bursts through e-commerce on key dates like John had pointed out on Mother's Day, and kind of key summer holidays, back to school, all opportunities to reach out and connect with family members or loved ones that may not be nearby. Even birthdays end up being bigger than in times past. So I think that that's been definitely something that has supported the e-commerce industry, and it's something that all retailers can continue to lean into. It looked that a lot of the merchants had an opportunity to integrate things like gift pages and potentially more concierge services. So those are definitely things that we'd encourage. And we also know that, and this is important, I think, even as you consider solutions like Loop Commerce, is that that returns are a point of friction in general in e-commerce. It's one of the single biggest reasons that consumers choose not to purchase with certain retailers is concerns around potentially having to process a return. So anything that you can do to reduce friction in that transaction process and make the choice to even purchase that product in the first place easier is something that benefits the consumer and ultimately benefits you as a merchant.
Yeah, I think it's a good point on the friction aspect of it. John, that kind of perfectly cues you up. Talk to us about how you've been seeing your services and your products reducing that kind of friction. And I've got a follow-up question on that because there's something else I wanted to dig into, and I want to start on that friction point.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of surprised me actually when I got into this space. I've been in the digital tech commerce world for 25 years, and it actually in 20 of those years, it never really dawned on me that those reasons not to buy are actually different for somebody shopping for somebody else than when you're shopping for yourself. And Sucharita pointed out returns as, yeah, it's kind of a pain when I got to bring 2 shirts in because I'm not sure and I'll send one back. But I'm expecting that. I've made the purchase for myself. I know I'm going to get to, and I know I'm going to have to create a return, right? That hesitation builds within the anxiety, right? So it's kind of the same reason why having millions of products is not great for a gift shopper versus 4 really well-defined products that I can just choose from easily, right? And so friction shows up in different ways. It creates that hesitation that ultimately leads to the non-conversion. And that's the way. And so when we say put on your gift shopper hat, we really mean put on your gift shopper hat. Don't just say go check out and make sure it's easy. It's what happens if I don't know where they live? What happens if I'm not sure of the size? I can't even put a product in the cart without picking a size and color because e-commerce can't process products; they can process SKUs. And so these are details that you got to really think about eliminating those barriers to those gift shoppers. And what we learned this year was that the pandemic woke up humanity a little bit. People started to actually value the relationships and wanted to celebrate them in different ways. And so, of course, we saw these spikes we did in the holidays because of distance and things like that. But we saw a huge spike in non-traditional gifting reasons, just because, or I'm thinking about you, or I know it got really cold this weekend. Here's some mittens just because I want you to know I'm thinking about you, right? Because we're not connecting in the ways that we normally connect. And so we think that that's going to maintain. We don't think humanity will be lost when this vaccine sort of brings us back to normal life. And so I think retail needs to think a little bit more about how to serve those everyday needs because they invest so heavily in those 4 or 5 moments throughout the year that everybody's buying gifts at the same time. But there's 1 million people celebrating a birthday today that people are buying gifts for. And most folks are not doing a great job of monetizing that demand.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just wanted to take a look, call everyone's attention back to the poll that we just had. 1/3 of the people here on the call said that they don't offer anything specific to gifting. And I guess that's going to be, the case of, some of the folks just aren't in retail that are watching the call today, but some of them are. And I think one of the things I thought was interesting, John, from our talk yesterday was that you said there are a number of retailers that offer gifts but don't even know it. And from personal experience, when I was with Vintage Tub and Bath, my family's company, we were selling cast iron cloth tubs and plumbing fixtures. Not exactly the most giftable of items until they are. Until they are. I did a search back in the ancient days before electricity, back in 2004, when you would look at the product rating. Yes, I am a man of a certain age. When you go back in the product reviews, and I just searched for the word gift. And curved shower rods. Who knew? And then we created a page for curved shower rods as a great gift. We couldn't keep them in stock. So, there's definitely a point where you may be selling things that are gifts that you have no idea are gifts. And it really is based on
friction. That curved rods got it.
Yeah. Oh, you'll love it. I'm telling you, you'll never, ever, ever go back. And the hook shower curtains, they're just things of beauty. They revolutionize your life.
Yeah, Alan, we see it all the time, especially when we're, I'll give just a short story about a shoe company in the running space that we talked to at one point. And And it was, they reached out to us. We had a quick call, and they were like, "Well, we just don't really think we're giftable." And this particular brand is known really in kind of marathon shoes, like people that use them for function versus fashion. And the reason is because they weren't set up to actually make them giftable, right? So if somebody's going there to buy it for themselves, there is somebody in their life that wants to honor that and celebrate that and would want to buy it for them. But shoes are really hard, especially a technical shoe like that, where I'm not a marathon guy. What do I know about it, right? Except I know my friend just does them 5 times a year and is constantly, training for them and things like that. So shoes aren't giftable until they're easy to gift. And then they make really great gifts, right? That celebrate that sort of that connection you have with that person. And so don't underestimate your assortment. If people will buy it for themselves, somebody else will buy it for them too. Yeah. It turns out it's just inaccessible in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Now we're going to get to the audience questions here in just a moment, but I do want to go back to our retailers on the panel here. Melissa, we were talking yesterday. There's kind of a certain revelation that you had about how the consumers that were buying gifts for other people and how that kind of turned on itself. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, we found that our gifting kind of created a bit of a purchasing loop. So of course, there's huge demand for gifts during the holiday season. So we were able to attract those gift purchasers looking to gift for somebody else. But then once we attracted them, they were sold basically on the product themselves and purchased their own like self-subscription. So we saw gangbusters success for gifting this year. We tripled gifting from the year before, but then December was also a huge acquisition month. It was our second biggest acquisition month ever. So it was kind of like just a happy kind of accident, but it actually proved to us that we really are quite a seasonal business and that gifting can be a part of our bigger acquisition strategy.
Alvaro, I'll take it to you. You had your own epiphany.
Yeah, and it's
well.
more, I think, a realization because, again, we were so subscriber focused and our non-subscriber portion of revenue was on the smaller side that, in the land of actually prioritization, we didn't focus much on them. But I think the pandemic has changed that quite a bit. And we're seeing so many just, kind of a la carte shoppers coming in through our e-commerce shop and buying our boxes one-off, is that becomes a huge, to Melissa's point, acquisition tool. So you have all these people who obviously have already shopped with us once or maybe multiple times in one way we do business. So again, kind of refocusing this year and better developing out the funnels, the communications, the email trips to kind of convert those users into kind of high volume or subscribers to our subscription program. So it's kind of an early year focus so that we can kind of capitalize as we go through the year.
All right. So let's turn to some of the audience questions here. Lucille DeHart is asking, are there any best practices to connecting with gift recipients without infringing on privacy rights? I mean, clearly privacy rights have definitely become front and center, whether it's third-party cooking or anything else that's going on. I mean, privacy is something everyone's going to be dealing with. John, I think I'll kick that to you first, and then I'll ask our retailers in Sucharita what she thinks.
Yeah, so I think it's a little known but interesting fact when you really unpack kind of the gifting anatomy. You actually end up with 2 customers, right? Now, traditionally those customers have been invisible because I bring the thing to my house, I put it into a box, and then I give it to somebody, and you never know who that person is, but they're now a customer of the brand, right? And so the connectivity between your ability to actually remarket to them is where that breaks down when you have a physical environment and not a digital one. And so, we view the world through, hey, again, this digital connectivity. If I know who's receiving that gift and I actually process that order on their behalf, they actually become a customer of yours. And the person who bought it, so they're a customer too. And so, we often will see customer acquisition as a main strategy for retailers that we're working with because they want to know who that second person is and they want to have the ability to market to them. And they have to opt in for that, just like they have to opt in for other things as a recipient. But if you keep that environment closed first and you give yourself the chance to acquire that data and that customer, then you've got a chance. And by the way, everyone who's got great products, there are corporate environments you can sell those into as well. So if you think your stuff is good for gifting for consumers, it's probably good gifting for businesses, and that's hundreds of billions of dollars a year being spent.
I'll second that.
So that's a huge,
Yeah,
huge customer acquisition chance for you there.
That's fun. It's funny because one of the audience members, Dina Lucido, asked who's the target audience for corporate gifting. So you teed that one right up. So
your customers are your audience for corporate gifting. I mean, you never know. I mean, a lot of them could have access in HR, executives, whatever, for that. We actually launched gifting this year as a bit of an experiment. We didn't really know what the take rate would be. And so we kind of dog fooded it. We literally had just a form on our site that was handled by our customer experience team. And it actually was around like 15 to 20% of our total gift sales. And we're still seeing inbound demand because transitioning from gifting for the holidays into almost now with this work from home environment, more of like a corporate perk. People, especially with coffee, we're in a really good situation for that. But I think companies are looking for other ways to kind of like supplement the at-home work experience, just to make their employees' lives a little bit better. So I think there's a lot of companies that can pivot in that way. Even retailers, that's been something brands have been doing for years, but I think fewer brands have really taken advantage of that opportunity right now.
Nothing says I love you like a curved shower rod. There were others.
Just in time for Mother's Day.
On the original question, I mean, we ask our customers, so it's not even about collecting data that is out through back channels, but when you sign up for our service, we have a questionnaire about what categories you're interested in. And so that allows us to service up for yourself things you might like, but also we launched like a concierge service where literally we told you right into us, tell us what the person you're shopping for likes, and we'll give you customized gift suggestions based on that. So I think in terms of gifting and privacy, any kind of personalized recommendations we do is kind of already intent and kind of someone who's raised their hand. And so we're delivering on that.
Cool. So Tarita, any thoughts on the comments you've heard so far? Do we just go to the next question?
The only thing I'd add, yes, definitely corporate gifting, huge. The other piece that everybody has, when you send a gift is you have the address, which is one of the most important pieces of information. You don't need all of the other first party data, just send direct mail. That's my advice.
All right, we're over right now, but I'm going to get to these last two. I'm sorry, was another comment?
Yeah, that was good advice.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at the time. And I just want to get everyone's questions in. We've got two more. Question for the group. Are you finding that people are giving virtual gifts, for example, master classes, cooking lessons, travel experiences to a greater degree? And is that incremental or cutting into physical gifts being sent? So are the experiences digging into the physical gifts? Anyone got thoughts on that one? Don't all answer at once.
I do, but I'll wait for the rest.
Going once, going twice.
We surveyed our customers to see just the level of interest in creating or delivering experiences as gifts, and frankly, it was pretty low. So that would have been an investment in a whole different category than we were experts in. So that's the only kind of data point that I have to share in that.
All right, John, your thoughts, sir?
Sorry, the screen. Yeah, so I see where you're coming from on that, Melissa, for sure. We are seeing an increase in demand, especially in corporate for experiences, right? Sure. Over maybe products, even if there's a wide variety of product selection. Experience is something that's a little bit more human, and so people are trying to use that to connect. I would encourage you to think about how you can wrap what you have as an experience, right? It's not maybe coffee, it's a coffee lunch or a coffee date. And so sort of creating that the optics of the coffee just enables this thing that's going to happen around it, right, as the centerpiece of it. And so that's where we're seeing it. We're seeing employers wanting to give pizza night, movie night, lunch date, things, these types of events or these types of experiences. So think about how your product and assortment can support an experience and package it as a SKU, as a message.
All right, our final question here comes from Mario. How do small e-commerce websites specialize in gifting? How do they compete against giants such as Amazon, Etsy, and the Walmarts of the world? How do we do a little guerrilla marketing here?
I think I think you don't compete where they're strongest. So you don't try to play up, I think, the delivery times or the huge wide assortment. You go towards your own personal strengths. So curation, for example, if you're going to shop to Amazon, that's a stressful experience unless you really know what you want. I used to say, if you know what EDC product you want to buy, you probably go to Amazon and buy it. If you want to know like 10 really cool EDC products that would make great gifts, you'd come to us. So I think it's all about knowing what your strengths are and playing into that versus trying to compete with them, because you're not. I mean, I have a great discount to my own company, and yet I shop a ton on Amazon for the things that I know they're going to be most convenient for. So I think it's really about your own strengths.
What I'll add is that people don't like, I mean, so the idea of buying like a, kind of like a baby gift or a wedding gift from a site like Amazon isn't something that gives people a lot of excitement. They do want to often go to special, unique, small sites. As a special, unique, small site, you want to make sure that your unboxing experience is awesome. You want to make sure that things like, kind of your ability to package together. My sister gave me an earful like a few months ago. She was trying to buy like, kind of a set from a website of like these 4 things, and she wanted it all put together in a gift box, and the retailer only allowed her to buy each of those things in 4 different boxes. And she was like, that's ridiculous. That I'm not going to buy from them as a result of that. So think about what your gift recipient, not just the gift recipient, but what does the gift giver want? And how can you deliver that to them in a way that makes them look like an awesome gift giver?
Yeah, I would add to all of that and double down also as investing in not just something that really adds value, that the gift recipient can feel good about giving, that actually shows somebody that they care and allows them to connect with them, but then also something that is kind of like a great advertisement, if you will, for your own product too, to kind of create that virtual loop, if you will, and basically is using that gifting opportunity to drive trial essentially with the experience that you want to be known for as well, and really kind of creating an experience around that.
Yep. And both of you guys, Alvaro and Melissa, you guys have both done a lot with personalization. I mean, that's a strength that you're kind of talking about peripherally here, right? You can do things in a way that the Amazons and Walmarts of the world cannot. You can offer a more personalized experience. And to Sucharita's point, the unboxing experience is key. I got a Valentine's Day gift from Vosges Chocolates, and it was this Egyptian box. And I've never seen chocolate packaging that good in my life. I mean, it just is a showstopper. And those are experiences that you just can't get at the large stores. So, yeah, excellent points all around. With that, I think it's time to wrap this up. So I just want to thank all of our speakers, Melissa Barnes from Trade, Sucharita Kodali from Forrester Research, Alvaro de la Rocha from Bespoke Post, and John Gresh from Loop Commerce Gift Now. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks for having us, Alan. And everyone else, thanks for joining.
All right. Okay, and that's about it. So again, thanks to Loop Commerce for sponsoring today's webinar. Don't forget you can download the slides and the Loop Commerce white papers by clicking on the handouts section to the right of your screen. And I also want to remind you that CommerceNext is on YouTube. There's 100 plus videos there for you to check out. And our summit videos have just been posted. A lot of great stuff there. And finally, thanks to you, the audience, for taking the time to join us today. We appreciate your continued interest and support. I'm Alan Dick. And on behalf of my fellow co-founders, Scott Silverman and Veronica Sansev, I want to wish you all the best for a healthy and prosperous 2021. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.